Good morning, everyone. That was interesting for me to join the end of that discussion. My ears pricked up. I thought, are dead churches living churches? Of course, all churches without exception, follow a life cycle because they are living things. All living things follow a life cycle. And so really the question is not, is my church dead? It's, is my church dying? And what can I do to ensure it continues to live? Don't wait until the church is dead. Intervene earlier. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm grateful to Artak for the invitation to spend time with you today. And he has set me an interesting challenge. He has asked me to present on our Baptist Association's view of ethnic churches. He wants me to highlight what we perceive to be the strengths of ethnic churches and the challenges ethnic churches face, and also to comment on how our ethnic churches can better reach their local communities for Jesus. So I'm happy to give this a go, but let me say at the start, I am no expert on ethnic churches. I have a colleague at the Baptist Association who takes the lead on this. So as soon as I received the invitation from Artak, I went and spoke to him. And I said, help, you have to tell me what to say. And he gave me some good advice, and he referred me to some interesting research which I have studied, and it's on that basis that I feel reasonably confident to speak to you this morning. I didn't think it would be easy coming here. I know you, Artak. I know you. What I can say is that I am a migrant living here in Australia because I am a proud Scotsman. Go Scotland. I was born in Edinburgh in Scotland. And because my father was a medical doctor who specialized in tropical medicine, I spent part of my childhood in West Africa, living in Nigeria and in Ghana. The first church that I pastored after completing my theological studies was in central London and was 50% Afro-Caribbean. It was a richly multicultural church. There were people from the West Indies, there were people from Nigeria and from Ghana, from Sierra Leone, from Cameroon, from Zambia, all in the one congregation. And there I was, a young graduate from Bible college. I was put in the middle of this, and it was a very interesting time for me. The church I pastored before I moved into my current role is in South Sydney. And in the 18 years that I was there, we saw a rapid increase in the number of people from Asian backgrounds who started attending the church. And that church today is a richly multicultural church. And then in my own family, 2 years ago, 2 of my sons got married. It was a very expensive year for me, very expensive year. 2 of my sons got married, and one of them married a Chinese woman. So we have welcomed into our home somebody from a different ethnic group. We are now a multicultural household, and they are expecting their first child later this year. So I'm no expert, but I do have limited experience of interacting with different ethnic groups, pastoring multicultural churches, and serving churches that are of various ethnic groups. So just in the past 2 years, part of my role has been to support churches that want to join our association. And we have had Nepali churches and Congolese churches and Chinese churches and Vietnamese churches join our association. And I have worked with each of them. Now, let me move this on. Oh, one too many. So, first of all, I want to acknowledge the significance of ethnic churches to our Baptist Association. Australia is increasingly multicultural. You will be aware of this, you don't need me to tell you. Here is a graph that demonstrates that well. Way back in 1947, only 10% of the population was born overseas. However, by 2021, the proportion had risen to 27%, and by last year, the proportion stood at 31.5%. Those are the statistics for first-generation migrants. The proportion of people who are either first or second-generation migrants is now over 50%. So every second person that you meet in Australia is either a first or a second-generation migrant. At the Baptist Association, we recognize this. We understand the significance of our ethnic churches. They play a very important part in our association life. They come with their people, with their life experiences, with their resources, and we want to honor them, and we want to ensure that our association is representative of all of them. I've got some statistics you can see on the screen here. This is as of May last year, and the statistics are for the Baptist Association of New South Wales and the ACT. We had just over 350, it's probably closer to 360 churches last year. 90 of those churches are LOTE churches, languages other than English churches, or CAL churches, culturally and linguistically diverse churches. 77 of them are LOTE churches. They mainly speak only their heart language at their services or multiple homeland languages. Like with the Good News Sydney Slavic Baptist Church, where Russian is used and Ukrainian and Armenian. Yes, yeah. Statistics from the Baptist Union of Victoria. Any Victorians here? I commiserate with you. I truly do. I commiserate. Much colder down there, isn't it? Much colder. Statistics from the Baptist Union of Victoria as of 2022, 257 churches, 106 are LOTE or CAL, so a larger proportion of Victorian churches are LOTE or CAL. At that time, there were 33 languages or dialects represented across Baptist Union Victoria churches. So we recognize the significance of our multicultural country and the importance of our ethnic churches. And broadly speaking, in our churches in New South Wales and the ACT, and this will be the same in every state and territory, there are three groups of people. There are first generation, non-English speaking migrants. There are second generation and third generation migrants, and there are Anglo-Australians. So I'm interested to see which of these groups are represented in your churches. So I'm going to ask you to put up your hand if your church has first generation non-English speaking migrants in it. Yeah, thank you. And then raise your hand if you have second generation and third generation migrants as well. Yep. And raise your hand if you have Anglo-Australians. So much fewer with Anglo-Australians. We're not to be feared. We can be quite nice people at times. Okay, very briefly, the different types of ethnic church that I and my colleagues have observed in our Baptist associations. There are four that I want to draw to your attention briefly. The first is what we describe as monocultural. And a monocultural church is homogeneous in language and ethnicity and in culture. So in this model, when migrants arrive from overseas, they look for a place to meet people from their homeland and worship in their heart language and according to their own traditions. That's the monocultural model. The second model we've observed is what we call the friendship model. This refers to an ethnic church that has some kind of cross-cultural relationship with another congregation, usually an Anglo-Aussie congregation. In this model, the ethnic church effectively evangelizes and engages members of their own linguistic communities. However, they rely on the host church to provide them with facilities they rent primarily for Sunday worship. Each of the churches retains its own leadership, constitutional, financial, and administrative structures, and the two churches sit alongside one another rather than interacting with each other, and usually express little desire to partner together in ministry. That's the friendship model. The third model we've observed is what we call the partnership model. This takes the friendship model to the next level. It's not only about sharing a facility, a building, but also about equal ownership and management of that facility for clearly negotiated missional purposes. This model desires more than a landlord-tenant relationship. The two churches begin to come together as one, but while retaining their own language, services, and ministries. But structure and constitution and finance and administration is centralized. And this structure encourages the established church and the ethnic church to interact. Public worship services are still separate and conducted in the congregation's respective languages, but there are periodic combined services with interpretation. Leaders of the congregation see themselves as one team. Interaction happens at many levels. So the children's and youth ministries tend to meet across congregations. And consequently, the second and third generation migrants often attend a more youth-oriented English-speaking service. And then the fourth model we've observed is what we refer to as the integrated model. This is a church made up of diverse ethnic and cultural groups, including Anglo-Aussies. There is one common language, usually English. However, the church is influenced by all the cultures represented and not just by the dominant culture. Now, there's a recognition and affirmation of the different cultural values and practices of those in the minority. 4 different models then. I want to find out which model your church most closely aligns with. So, who here this morning would say that their church is essentially a monocultural church? Monocultural. What about the friendship model, where you're maybe renting a facility that is managed by an Anglo-Aussie church? Any of those here today? What about the partnership model, where you're closely connected with another church? No, I think it's mainly monocultural, is it? Yeah, mainly. Yes, you're certainly on the way to integrated because of the Ermington Family Church. Yeah, I suspect it's mainly monocultural. So let me quickly, and then we can open it up for discussion. Let me quickly highlight what we observe to be the strengths and the challenges of each of these models. And I'll start with the monocultural. The key strengths that attach to a monocultural ethnic church include the following. There is usually deep fellowship and a sense of belonging, especially for first-generation migrants who have come from overseas, are nervous about integrating into Australia as a whole, and find a place to belong in a church that uses their own language and honors their traditions. Worship and prayer in one's heart language, that is a strength of the monocultural church. I know if I went to a Slavic country to live and work, I would struggle to attend a Russian-speaking or a Ukrainian-speaking or an Armenian-speaking church. I think I would look for an English-speaking church so that I could worship God in my own heart language. And of course, the monocultural ethnic church here in Australia is well placed to evangelize others of the same culture. There's some of the key strengths. But there are also challenges. And here are just some of the challenges. One challenge is isolation. The monocultural church can exist in isolation without having any relationship with the other churches in its neighborhood. It can just do its own thing in its own way. And yet we were created by God for community. And we have been given the same mission, to go into all the world and make disciples of all nations. And no single church can achieve that on its own. We need somehow to work together if we are to obey Christ's command. And so a key challenge for the monocultural ethnic church is isolation. And then there can be tensions between first and second or first and third generations as children and young people grow up in Australia and make friends outside of their ethnic group. They can want to go along to their friends' churches rather than to continue attending their family church. Or they can want their family church to change and evolve, and that can create tensions. And then there's the challenge of sustainability. And we've seen this particularly with our Chinese churches, where second and third generation young people have left their family church to attend multicultural churches, and the family church is no longer sustainable. As the people get older and go to glory, the church cannot sustain its life going forward. Some key strengths of the friendship model. Well, the ethnic church has a building in which to base its public worship services and ministry. At the same time, there's freedom for the ethnic church to drive its own ministries and mission in the way that it thinks is culturally appropriate. And while there is limited interaction, friendships between the two churches can develop, and that can be a good thing, a supportive thing. But there are also challenges. The power tends to remain with the host church, and that can be problematical. There is limited opportunity for sharing with and learning from one another because the two are essentially still separate. And there are the other challenges that are associated with the monocultural model. And then the partnership model. Well, the key strengths here are that the ethnic church is no longer just a tenant, but rather has a physical home. There's opportunity for second and third generation to stay in the church, participating in the English language service and ministries. And also the ethnic congregation can direct any English-speaking contacts they have to the English service. Maybe people they've met at work who they are sharing the gospel with. Those people are interested. They want to find out more, but they couldn't access the ethnic service. They could access the English service. They can come to the church together, go to their respective services, and the relationship develops. But there are challenges, of course, and here are just some. The English language group can still hold the power. There are different communication styles because of language and because of culture. And sometimes there are different conflict styles. An ethnic church, like a Korean church, for example, will communicate and will resolve conflict in a very different way to an Anglo-Aussie church. I'm not sure how the Slavic churches resolve conflict. Yeah. And then finally, the integrated church, the key strengths of the integrated model. Members of the community, by the community I mean the geographical community in which the building is located. Members of the community visiting the church are more likely to find people like them. If an Anglo-Aussie from Ermington came in here on a Sunday morning when the Good News Sydney Slavic Baptist Church was meeting, they would get a bit of a surprise. But in a multicultural, integrated church, people coming in are more likely to find other people like them. There's the potential for unity and diversity without the imperialism of the dominant culture, and a rich cultural atmosphere can develop, a taste of heaven, perhaps. I say perhaps. You know those wonderful verses in the Gospels and in Revelation? The Gospels, is it Luke 13, talks about people coming from north and south and east and west to take their place at the feast in the kingdom of God. What a wonderful picture that is. There is one feast, one kingdom, but people are coming from the four corners of the earth, coming together because of Jesus Christ. And those verses in Revelation that speak of him purchasing for himself people of every tribe and language and nation. That is really quite wonderful. Rich cultural atmosphere. But of course there are always challenges. It can be hard work. Really hard work, especially to lead in that sort of context. Language barriers need to be overcome. The differences created by different heart languages can't be ignored. And the dominant cultural group must allow themselves to become more marginal. They must honor and respect the minority cultures. So these are the four main models that we have observed in our association life. And my colleague in Victoria says that it's the same there. All four models have their strengths and their challenges. The different models are all useful for different churches in different situations at different times, but each church must be clear about why it is practicing the model that it is, how that contributes to the mission of God in the world today, and how to leverage off the strengths and work on overcoming the challenges. That's part of avoiding following the life cycle to its conclusion, which is death. So I'm happy to open it up for discussion. I'm interested in whether you have observed these models in your associations, the ones that you've come from, and whether the strengths and the challenges I've outlined are ones that you resonate with.